Okay, you're recording. Go ahead. I'll make you co-host.
Okay, so I'm going to call the meeting of the Town Services and Outreach Committee order. Um, Today is 9th of January, and this is a meeting that has been posted. We are meeting virtually, which we're allowed to do under current open meeting law rules. And but this is a meeting that is being conducted entirely by Zoom, so that public is able to participate by Zoom participation through the virtual means of the that have been established, and by telephone. And with that, I want to make sure that everybody on the committee can hear and be heard. So just go through quickly. Bob Hegner.
Present.
Jennifer Taub.
Present.
And George Ryan.
Present.
And Council Lord.
Present.
Okay, so we have all members of present, and our town manager is with us. Today's agenda is essentially 3 items. I want to first start, however, well, just the 3 items are to talk about Southeast Street, the part of the commission, the proposed Transportation Parking Commission, and then knowing that we're probably not going to reach a conclusion today on any of them, and that there might be changes to the committee composition after the new president is elected at the next council meeting, and then appoints members to the committee if we have recommendations, or otherwise there would be plans for this committee going forward if it is a committee. So those are the 3 items. I'm going to look in the see if there's anybody who is in the audience who would like to make public comment, and if so, I would ask that they raise their hand. Okay, let's see if I can do this. So I'll bring Tracy into the room. You've asked Tracy?
Yeah, hold on. You guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay, good. Awesome. So I just wanted to, I mean, I know you have 2 items on your agenda today that are of great interest to TAC, both the Southeast Street redesign proposal as well as the Transportation Parking Commission, but I'll leave it. I know that George Ryan has offered to come to the TAC meeting that we're holding later today and give us updates on those. And I'm looking forward to when they're referred to TAC, or, when we're able to provide additional comments. So I won't comment on those now, since I know you have a busy meeting, but I did want to just, since, there could be a change in the composition of TSO, I did want to just, as a TAC chair and, member, I did want to just share our appreciation for TSO and for the council for moving forward on so many transportation related items. I mean, town services and outreach is not just about road and services. So we appreciate that attention. I mean, there have been some great progress this year, including even the passage of the 25-mile-per-hour statutory speed limit, which has been on the carryover every year. And I think it actually was initially requested during a town meeting. There's the improvements on the school zones that we're going to be seeing, the new school zones in the middle school and high school, and a number of other projects. And I also really appreciate that Andy, that you as the chair and also the members have been formally asking for tax input on items, as well as the Disability Access Advisory Committee's input, because we haven't always had that relationship with TSO, and it's very helpful. And we appreciate being invited to conversations, including at the joint meeting in December on the Southeast Street project. We hope that will continue, in the next iteration of TSO. And on that vein, I do have, just because the statutory 25-mile-per-hour speed limit, the signs are now up and we've been told that their enforcement will begin soon. It would be great if with the next TSO, there could be some maybe joint meetings related to speed management. We do have the traffic speed zone up in North Amherst. We have these new school speed zones. And the question is, do people know what they mean, like how they're enforced? I know I have questions, and I'd be interested in inviting Chief Ting to one of the TAC meetings, but we had talked earlier if it could be a joint meeting. I know that that would be of interest to many people, including the TSO members and the rest of the council. So, but thank you. Thanks for all you guys do.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Appreciate you. And Tracy, I want to thank TAC and all of its members for all of the hard work that you do, and that you're a great support to the committees on many of the initiatives that you mentioned. Your guidance through that you have provided to TSO has really been an important part of the process. So it has been a great partnership, and we appreciate all you do too.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. So with that, I think we want to proceed. And I noticed that Guilford is in the audience, and I'm not sure that if somebody can give me a hint, what I can do to bring him actually into the meeting.
So you're the host, Andy. So if you just you can bring him in just like you did with Tracy.
I think that
It might not be able
I
to turn
don't
his
know if he
camera on.
can. He's actually fully in this, so that he can be seen on the screen if he wants to. But in any event, we do have him in the meeting. I want to proceed to talk to see where we are with Southeast Street, and knowing that Paul can only be with us for an hour, I want to try and get through as much as we can. Though when in about 45 minutes, if we haven't finished this item, I'm going to stop to see if there are any questions that any members of the committee have for Paul regarding the commission, so that he can offer his expertise on both topics and still get to where he has to be at 10 o'clock. So Paul, I had sent you an email regarding with a number of questions about the Southeast Street proposal. And I didn't know if you had a chance to give any thought to them, but I didn't press the issue because I'd rather do that with the entire committee being present. But the first thing, and Guilford, if you have anything to say on this, please join in too. But there's a question about timing for when the work is planned to be done, when you need input from this committee and the council, what kind of guidance you need, and what are the consequences of not completing the work prior to the school opening, and then questions about in general how we plan to fund it and fund the work, and whether that affects the timing. So if you have anything that you can give us for guidance on that you think would be helpful to the committee, certainly we'd appreciate it.
Sure. So I just sent, I'm going to text Guilford. I just sent him a link to Oh, so he's coming in now under my name because I sent him a link so he could be seen if he'd like to. Andy, is it possible for you to make me a co-host for a second?
How can do?
If you, or if, oh well, everybody knows that that's Guilford.
No, he's still.
Oh, he can change it. Good, good, good.
change
Okay,
it,
never
yeah.
mind. So, I don't think that we anticipate that this work will actually be done before the school gets built. It's like there's going to be some time for this to happen. Guilford, do you have a sense of, even if suppose the council gets a decision made this spring on what we want to do, we still have to fund it, identify the costs and then get an appropriation for the work. We will always be seeking additional funding from grants and things like that, of course, as Kathy Shane has suggested. Your thoughts on that, Guilford?
Yes, I mean, I put money in the budget for next capital plan for the design work, continued design work, because we spent everything we have. So unless we take paving money to do the design work, we have to have some money. So we won't have money until July 1st. So we would have to pretty much, it's at least probably a year discussing and designing so you're 18 months away from now have the plans done. So you wouldn't get anything probably under construction until 2 years from now at the earliest, if everyone said, let's start doing it this way.
So the likelihood the school will be operational before this work actually is done.
Yes.
And does that give the opportunity, and by the way, other members of the committee, if you have questions that seem relevant, please raise your hand so we can keep this flowing. But is there any possibility then that we might be learning something from how the street and the traffic is operating after the school opens? If there is a gap in time, will there be ability to make adjustments that seem appropriate based on that experience?
If we delay the design work, yes. So that would put us another year or so out. So if we wanted to take the first year of operation from the school and gather information from that, then we'd be another year out on the project. We will have some information. We will gain information during construction because the construction entrance will probably be used more than it would be as when the school is open. So you would have some information we can gain from just having the construction ongoing.
Get other members of the committee involved. Bob?
Yeah, I just had a question, Guilford. If you had an additional appropriation this fiscal year to start the design work, would that speed the process, or are we still looking at, kind of 2 years from now and into the future?
Yeah, I could move it up if you gave us money, well, the process to get an off-cycle appropriation is about a month too long. So you're only gaining four months in that whole process.
Okay. Thanks.
Jennifer?
Yeah, I don't mean to keep harping on this. I sort of did at the last meeting, but picking up on what Andy said, if there is something to be learned about what the reality of traffic flow and congestion is going to be after the school opens, because if what we're saying is enrollment has declined to the point that even when we merge the two schools going to the new Fort River location, that will be fewer students than maybe 20 years ago were enrolled in Fort River. And if we can encourage families to use the bus, because what I learned at the last meeting isn't really making sense to me, that families are driving their kids rather than more families are driving and fewer families having their children get to school via the school bus. that might it be that the increased traffic we anticipate may not be as great as the worst case scenario. So is there any advantage to seeing how it plays out after the school opens?
No. Guilford?
I mean, I'm not really sure there is any advantage. Have you driven through the parking lot of the Fort River School recently? Every parking space, every parking space is full, and they're parking in the basketball court. I know there's four. I think I was told there's 3 or 4 programs there. There's 2 district programs in the regular school, but now you're going to add the Wildwood School on. I mean, just the traffic that is from the staff and teachers at the school is more than it was when the full school was first opened in the 70s. It's I think we have a good handle, and we can probably estimate how that's going to flow. And then if we see how it's flowing, we've been collecting data as it is now, and when they start doing the construction, we'll be able to collect that data as well. We'll see a little more of how the 2 intersections would work. Hopefully we can get the contractor to come in at peak times or in a couple of days, and you can truly see how it's going to work.
Okay, well, that's helpful knowing that there's more program staff, more going on at the school. Because I left the last meeting kind of confused. If we're having fewer students than we used to, where is all the increased traffic? So that's, so I appreciate that response, that we can't just look at it as enrollment 20 years ago versus enrollment now. So you're saying that it's that the parking lot is full because of staff increased, not just students. Okay.
I mean, there's the Caminantes program, and there's another program which I don't know the name of, and then there's the regular school. So I think there's at least three programs at the school now, and the staff is quite large.
So it's a staff addition, even, yeah, more than the student enrollment per se. Okay.
There's one other factor, and that is that there really has already been a major change made to traffic flow for the school by moving the entrance and exit to the same place, as opposed to the prior where people coming from the north, which is a fair amount of the school population from current Fort River and from Wildwood, they would make their left turn much further south, which then would not make it conflict as much with the intersection at Main Street. And that change is we're already observing that. I don't know how that's what observations have been made by anybody on the staff who has professional experience from police or public works about how that traffic flow has been working. George?
So what I'm hearing is, I think, very concerning. I imagine everyone shares the concern, but I just want to make sure that I understand what I'm hearing. It sounds like we're going to need 3 plans. We're going to need, first of all, just a plan. I'm talking about traffic flow and just people getting in and out of the school. We're going to need one for just the current existing situation. Once the new school opens, there's not going to be any major changes in front of the school in terms of traffic and so on. They're going to be using the existing single entry and exit at the southern end of the campus. Then we're going to need a plan for dealing with traffic flow while enormous amounts of construction, we assume, are going on, involving perhaps, roundabouts and the common and bike paths and And that's just during construction. And then we'll finally have a plan for what it would look like when the dust settles. Is that pretty much the scenario we're looking at? We're looking at an initial period where the existing conditions are what we're going to have to deal with for getting people in and out of that school while it's running, the new school. And then there'll be a period of, I don't know, 6 months, I don't know how long it'll take, but a period of construction that'll be going on while people are using that school. And then finally, we'll be at the point where ideally there'll be will be where we want to be. Is that the accurate sort of crude description of what the reality is at the moment?
Yes.
Am I missing some? No,
Yeah.
that's it, eh? Okay, well, I'm moving out of town, so this sounds terrifying to me. But and I assume I'm also hearing that there really is no way we can accelerate this to try and minimize that scenario. There's nothing we can do at our end to accelerate this process to try and minimize the enormous amount of chaos or whatever you want to call it that's going to exist for a significant period while that new school is being used and enormous amounts of construction are taking place on the common and at potentially at two of the major intersections. There's nothing we can really do about that. It's that wouldn't really make that much difference if we did accelerate it.
If I was told to take money we have and other things and use it now, it'd be only accelerate by maybe 4 months is what I said. I think
4 months, yeah.
about it.
All right.
Yes, it's going to be a nice life experience.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
So I think that what we have now is status quo, and what we have now is buses and vehicles going into the north entrance with only construction vehicles going into the south entrance. And during construction, that will still be the case. You know, we've already had construction on the site. The contractor is limited in when they can do truck traffic in. They have blackout times around school beginning and school ending that they're not allowed to bring trucks in and go and out. So they know we went through those hours that they're not allowed to utilize that or to minimize the use of that entrance. So they're aware of those times. Like if they're doing a concrete pour or something, they know they have to avoid those timeframes. So I think, you know, what will happen once the school opens is that the bus traffic will be taken out of the north entrance and be moving to the south entrance, but there possibly could be more cars, more staff going into that south entrance. So I think for the committee, you have sort of right now you have an option with 4 roundabouts, and you have some other people have suggested other things. The thing you haven't really talked about is whether if you want to stay with the signalized intersections, you know, and whether we should, you know, what's the least change we can make to accommodate this? Like, should there be a coordinated signal for the north entrance that coordinates with, which I guess they all coordinate now according to Guilford, with the Main Street intersection? Can that be treated as one sort of giant elongated intersection in a way? I mean, Guilford referenced the Big Y intersection. This is what I think Guilford said, this is way more complex. So it may not work, but I think the goal of this committee should be like, what direction do you want us to go into? If the 4 roundabout option is not something you want to pursue, give us some direction on what you would like to pursue. Is that framed okay, Guilford, would you say?
Yes.
Which sort of then gets into the one question that I had sent to you previously that we didn't really talk about. You just gave a little bit of an answer to it, and that is what you and Guilford need from this committee in direction in order to help move this forward. And in saying that, I had recognized in my email to you that we have to get some clarity, because we're not traffic engineers, and we respect Guilford and his staff because of their expertise, and what level of input is needed and what level of input is too much is another piece of guidance that would be helpful for this TSO or a future TSO and the council as it's trying to participate in an appropriate fashion.
I mean, one way you could look at this is to say, is there one other, I mean, we don't want to keep going down like, what about this? What about that? Because it's cost a lot of money for these traffic engineers to do this work. And you do need the traffic engineers to do the work because they think of things that we obviously don't. But I think that if this committee said there is one other option we'd like to explore, that might be worth doing. If you're dissatisfied with the roundabout options.
Or if you just want us to compare the two more
Yeah, yeah.
thoroughly.
So sticking with this for a minute, and then we'll turn to the draft of the last committee meeting is the next topic. But George?
Actually, that's it. I think if we turn to that document, once you're done, Andy, that would, I think, raise up some of the things that we're concerned about, which aren't necessarily directly about engineering questions, but other questions. So yes, once you finish your thought, and then we can turn to the draft document.
Yeah, well, and so I guess what I'm asking is whether there are any other questions that any members of the committee want to ask before we go into taking a look at that draft. Seeing none, I guess everybody, by the way, the markup version should not have been in the packet, and it probably should be ignored. What that was about was that I had done a prior draft and I had sent it to Councilor Ryan and to Paul to see if either had comments. And then afterwards, I did a second version. And so the markup was between two versions of the same thing. So we're really working off of what is labeled as draft 2, because that is what emerged from that process of development of a draft for us to consider. And you know, the goal that I hope we come out of today, but we don't have to, is actually committee approval, and then it could be sent to the council as a committee document. Right now, it is not a committee document. So turning to the two parts of it is, does anybody have any thoughts about what are marked as principles for a new plan? Councilor Ryan.
Well, I just can't overstress, which I think is obvious to anyone who's read this, that if we're just in a situation where we're trying to decide between two potential engineering plans, that's really not what we felt strongly, and I think I can speak for everybody, but maybe not, that there's a whole piece missing here that needs to be paid a lot of attention to, whatever plan we choose. So whether it's 4 roundabouts, 3 roundabouts, a signalized intersection plus a roundabout. I mean, I don't see how we're going to come to that decision as a group. We just don't have the expertise. What is here, I mean, this is the second part of the document. It's a list of possible options. We're not going to be able to choose amongst these. I mean, I couldn't. And maybe, so if we're asked to choose between the current plan and some other alternative plan, we're not going to be able to produce an alternative plan. What we are saying here is that whatever plan is finally moved forward has to show a very real consideration for the fact that it's a school and the fact that there are going to be 2 affordable housing projects built right next to it. And so, you know, so that's the kind of takeaway I have from the first half of this document. And as for the rest of it, well, we'll have to talk about it. I have no idea what our alternative plan would be. I don't know how we'd ever come up with one.
Yes, I understand there is, I don't know if it's a major difference of opinion or just that, you know, Guilford has explained that roundabouts slow traffic perhaps more effectively than a signal, but we've heard from the Disability Rights Commission that people with disabilities are not comfortable crossing at roundabouts because they don't know that cars have come to a full stop. So I think, you know, that needs to be addressed, that concern with the roundabouts. Personally, the 4 roundabouts just seems like a plan we may come to regret. Those 2 roundabouts that are so close together at the north end, I would like to see an alternative, but so I would just, ask that, because I agree, we're not traffic engineers. I can't recommend, let's go this way instead of this particular way. And as Paul's saying, I would still personally, like to explore the one-way street options, one way going north and then south on Old Southeast Street. But as Paul just said, we can't just ask the consultants, look at this, look at that. That's expensive. And so so that's what I'm kind of struggling with, is to what extent can we rethink this? I think the 4 roundabouts seems like, I think there is probably a more viable option where we can also be responsive to the concerns of the Disability Access Rights Commission.
So if I can jump in, Andy, I think that's precisely where the council can provide direction to say, the 4 roundabouts, we don't want roundabouts, say, you could conclude that, and you say we don't want it, we don't think that works for this area. Or you could say we love roundabouts, we want them there. That's sort of that's a design, but it's also a policy decision. That's really what do you want to see? Or you can say this design we don't like at all because it doesn't address the concerns that we've articulated. Please come back with something different. And then you could throw that and say, we're looking for more signals, or a more broader approach, like the using Old East Street, whatever it is. So, but it's that high level kind of decision. I think direction is what's needed at this point in time.
Councilor Ryan?
So let me, first of all, high level direction, if that's what Paul's looking for, is item 2 or bullet 2 in the first half of this document. We want a plan that takes into consideration that it's a school and there's affordable housing all over the place. And so it shows placement of sidewalks, multimodal paths, crosswalks, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. None of which was in the plan that we got. So that's the first.
Can I just step in there?
Yeah,
It wasn't designed to be, it wasn't asked to be. Those things are
Okay.
included, after you get the concepts done. Like, that level of detail is just not ever expected at this level, I don't think.
Okay. Well, then the concept I would throw out there, for just because what do I know? But is I do like roundabouts, but if this would move things forward, maybe some kind of roundabout. Guilford mentioned a peanut, some kind of, or whatever it's called, at the what is it, the northern end, and then a signalized intersection at the southern end. So maybe a compromise. I think there's a sense that the 4 of them as a string is not, that gives everybody pause, at least from this committee's perspective. So what about a roundabout at one end and a signalized intersection at the other? Would that work? But
So-
I'm just, yeah.
Yeah, so the other substantive thought for the council is, do you care if we dig into this, to the common, or not? Like, are you willing to give up the common? If you say yes to we're willing to give up the common, be aware that you're talking about taking down a large number of mature trees. But because that goes with that, digging into the common gives you a lot more options. So that's sort of a fundamental decision. Like, some people would say, don't touch the common. Some people would say, we don't value that piece of land. That's all. The council owns that. So I think that's another sort of pivotal question for the council to grapple with.
So Paul, if I may ask, I mean, I have no idea what that means. The only thing we talked about with the common is maybe putting a sidewalk or cross path at the northern end. So if we had a plan or some notion of a plan as to what that would mean, we could give you an answer. But at the moment, I think we all agree the common is not sacred. We don't have a problem with some kind of work on the common that would make this plan work. But we have no idea to what extent we're talking about. Are we talking about it disappearing? And we just need a plan. I mean, what does it mean to cut into the common? Yeah, go for that. I just, yeah, I don't know what that means.
But I need to know your willingness to sacrifice or see part of the common used. We've never been told to use the common, so
Mhm.
we've always stayed in the, pretty much in the layout of the road, the pavement.
Right.
Gone just a little bit left or right, within a couple of feet.
So you might shrink it, so there'd still be a common, but it wouldn't be as large, or would it
It would
just
be
completely
smaller, yes.
Yeah, right,
But the trees would go, some of the trees would go.
okay. Well, I mean, all I'll say is that in the current plan, there's nothing about as you said, since the common is viewed as sacred, the current plan doesn't show any kind of change to the common.
Right.
So we can't really give you an opinion on the common without seeing what sort of changes you have in mind, other than there are going to be some trees that are going to go away.
Oh, well, no, the parameter has to come first. The parameter was don't touch the common, design a system that does not infringe upon the common,
Who
right?
said that? I did.
No,
That's always been our
that's
marching.
been our operating, nobody, the council
What?
never said, that's been our operating.
Okay, fine.
You know, and then the council says you were wrong in that
Okay.
parameter. We can then say, okay, we can look at this differently and
Okay.
and come up with something different, but there are consequences to that concept in that that the common will, some people may care about the common, some others may not, I don't know, but definitely the trees would be impacted.
Wasn't there?
What I care about are the kids in the school and
Mhm.
people driving and walking and cycling, and that's what I care about. And so that's me. Sorry.
There was a little bit of incursion probably on the common from the roundabouts, but
Mm-hmm.
wasn't significant. The Jennifer, and then
I feel like sometimes we get these false equivalencies, like if we want to protect the kids, we have to shred the commons. So yeah, and there is, I think, a distinction between cutting in a little in the common and then we're just gonna, that's the most historic part of town in terms of how far back it dates and significant historical events that happen there. So I don't want to say, sure, take the common. I would, could we be able to respect and keep intact that very old part of town and ensure pedestrian safety and perhaps ease traffic if we did go back to looking at the 2 one-way streets? I mean, that seems to me as viable, as perhaps sound a suggestion as digging commons.
So- Go ahead, Paul.
I just want to say first, pedestrian safety will be, it's going to be designed for pedestrian safety. That's a given. It'll be designed to meet the requirements of the ADA. That's a given. We can't design something that doesn't address pedestrian safety. It doesn't address ADA requirements. What we're hearing from folks, we hear from what you hear from TAC and you hear from DAAC, that one group likes roundabouts, one group doesn't like roundabouts. We heard that when you had your joint meeting. And that means it lands in your lap on what there are pluses and minuses. There's no perfect solution. It's the best of what we can do, but there are fundamental. I think you should be assured. I don't think we need to talk about pedestrian safety. That will be included in this. There will be sidewalks there, all those. There'll be safe safe crossings. What that looks like when you get farther down into the plan, you can look at that and evaluate that more. But you should assume that that's a fundamental part of the design that comes forward.
Jennifer, and then I need to see if we
I
can.
feel we've heard from a lot of different constituencies that the desire for to reduce, if we're going to at least not have 4 roundabouts, that sounded like, I mean, as a high level suggestion, that's what I heard from the different constituencies that have weighed in, that at the least the 4 roundabouts, they'd like to see some rethinking of that suggestion. I also want to ask if in the interim while all this construction is going on, I don't know how much it takes to, really kind of firm up the walking paths coming from the east to the school, like from the new Belchertown Road development. So if students are coming by foot or biking, can they not have to go out to Southeast Street, but either coming from Pelham Road or Belchertown Road, be able to, is there a footpath that they can walk to the school without having to come out to Southeast Street and then maybe not having to be driven to school? I guess it's by the Fort River. I don't know if there had to be, if the bridge had to be reinforced.
Well, you would, if you want to cross from Belchertown Road into the school property, you would have to cross over property that's under the control of the Conservation Commission. It's the community gardens, and you would have to use part of the land that's going to be part of the new housing development that the town's working with to develop. That would get you to the school property, but then you'd have to install a bridge, a pedestrian bridge, to get across the little section of the stream river there onto the property. And that's something that can be looked at totally separate, and worked on totally at a separate pace than this. If that's, but that would have to, we would have to coordinate with the developers of the housing development as well, because they would have to give us the way to get in there to the community garden area and then over to the school.
So do
But-
we see that development happening at the same time as the school? I mean, so there'll be construction.
More than likely.
Yeah, they have that walkway path access from Belchertown Road is something with a bridge over the Fort River is something that's certainly under consideration. I don't think that impacts this decision you're making though.
Right, no, doesn't that ease some of the,
It is on the options list, however, for that draft memo. And as far as the other side from, there is that pathway which is not in, the best it could be, but could be improved to make it more useful to come in from Main Street to the school property without having to go to Southeast Street.
Yes, that's on the school property, and they maintain that little trail. One of the issues, and they're gonna have the same issue with the trail on from Belchertown Road, is lighting. Putting lighting in and who maintains the lighting and keeping the lighting going and fixed. The path at the school, the lights have fallen in complete disrepair, and it's a little dark, and it's a lot more than dark. It's kind of dark. People don't use it because it's too dark at sometimes.
Yeah, one other thing on some of the things that were said before, and then I did say a quarter of that I was going to recognize that Paul has to go, and if there was discussion that he needed to take place that involves him with the Transportation Parking Commission, we needed to get on with that too. So I just wanted to remind you of that. It is true that DAAC has historically, and for very good reason, and I respect greatly their concerns, is concerned about pedestrian safety and safety for people who they are charged with looking out for at roundabouts. But this is not a new topic, and when I talk to people on TAC about it, and and Guilford has been involved in these discussions, obviously too, and has acted upon them. That TAC's view is that those are important concerns, but that there are ways to address them. And if you recall, when we were working on the Amity Street, University Drive roundabout, which has now been approved, it was only approved after changes were made to accommodate some of those concerns. So I would assume that if we are interested in moving forward with roundabouts, any of the roundabouts that were discussed in the prior proposal, that those kinds of issues would be addressed. So let's quickly see if there's anything more. Jennifer and then Bob and then
I think Bob had his hand up first, so go to Bob.
I-
Okay,
So anyway, all I was going to say is that, per what George said, I don't think anybody on the council can weigh in with anything other than their own personal biases as to what they want. I think we're better off just waiting and letting the school open and letting the construction be done and find out whether there's a problem or not. And if there's a problem, we should solve it. But I mean, at this point, we're trying to solve a problem that we don't really know what it is. And we're trying to solve it with basically no information. And if we want more information, we have to do an engineering study, which is too expensive. So I can't decide on anything other than what I find personally, my own personal bias. I can't be rational about a decision here. So maybe this isn't helpful, but I don't see how we can make a decision at this point with this level of information.
Jennifer.
You're on mute.
I'm sorry. I just said I'm kind of with Bob. That might be horrifying to Guilford. I'd like to hear his response, but
My response would be then, yes, you want to see something, another alternative. The other alternative would be to look at traffic lights and changing it and maybe comparing the two together and seeing how it floats. So that's really what you're saying is you want another option to look at.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it sounds like the 4 roundabout option didn't sit well with folks, that you would like something else. I'm also hearing that you're okay with digging into the common, but not substantially because of the historic nature of the common, and that, if it requires some taking of it, but not a wholesale, like add another lane of traffic type of taking of the common, that would require elimination of trees. I mean, that's sort of a fundamental question. How much room do we have to work with? Like, that's really the question. It's all the public way, so you control everything from the sidewalk on the bypass road to the. But I think the historic nature of it and the trees are important considerations. You haven't heard from folks on that yet. So just whether we can use that land area or not is sort of an important thing, especially if we're going to look into a signalized intersection. Or
I guess it would be helpful for us to know the degree of problems that have been observed by police department and public works particularly at the morning hours and the evening hours when the head traffic is the heaviest, turning in and out of the schools. What has been observed so far, and what as professionals do either the departments have to say are problems that need to be addressed? That might be helpful information. Councilor Ryan, and then we'll take a break to go to the other topic for a couple of minutes.
So what I'm hearing is sort of 2 possible scenarios. One is with the points that Paul just made, goes back to Guilford, back to the engineers, and they come forward at some expense with another plan. And the other scenario, which is maybe where we'll go, but the other scenario, which has just come up, gives me pause, but is maybe worth mentioning, is we don't do anything. I mean, we basically just sit. Let's see what happens. Obviously, there'll have to be some kind. I mean, leave things as they are. So you have signalized intersections at both ends. Don't have any round. You just have the one entrance and exit, and you may have to do some fancy engineering with the lights. Or maybe not, I don't know. And we'll see what happens. And if all hell breaks loose, then I guess we'll have to, come up with a better plan. It seems those are the 2 possibilities. Do we want to send this back to Paul and Guilford and say, come up with an alternative plan along the lines that Paul sketched very briefly? Or do we want to say, you know, at this point, maybe we just got to sit tight and see what happens?
I think the alternative, George, would be alternative plan permanent or an alternative interim plan that will last for 5 years until we can study the intersection, because people's behaviors may change, who knows? But that right now we have a temporary light up there that's just flashing and doesn't
Right.
coordinate
That's
anything.
not going to work, right?
Yeah.
Right. So what about the thought of a temporary 5-year plan that doesn't involve very much money and certainly doesn't involve, you know, major takings of the common or roundabouts or anything else, and then kick the can down the road?
So let me just put in, if you say you're just gonna let it sit for 5 years and then
Right.
decide to just what you're gonna do, you're now adding, that's a 7-year time period, because there's 2 years for, at least 2 years for design and construction.
Mhm.
So just when you kick something 5 years and then say you're gonna make a decision in 5 years, there's 2 more years to design and construction at least.
Yeah, Jennifer,
I'm muted, I'm sorry. I was just gonna say, what about letting school open and giving it a year or two? And when Paul mentions it temporary measures, I mean, it sounds like having the buses go in one entrance and the cars going another, maybe part of what you want to do immediately. Because from what I was gathering, it sounded like if the buses and the cars go in the same entrance, students will be walking in front of the buses.
No, when the new school opens, the buses will go
Right.
in the south entrance.
Right, so I don't know if that's different than what's happening now. So I mean, that's the kind of temporary thing you may want to implement right away when school opens, and maybe we can say, give it a year or two after the school opens to see what the situation is instead of 5 years.
Mhm.
But
I
comfortable
think
with
the
that.
5 years was, from the observation point after the school is opened, then if it's not working and you design and go forward with construction, it's going to be 5 years from that
From the
point
time this new
forward.
school opens.
Yeah, I think that's what the problem was. I'm going to turn this topic just for a moment with apologies. Just to say real briefly that I did have a conversation with a Northampton counselor and council president Alex Jarrett. He's a Ward 5 representative or elected as Ward 5 counselor in Northampton. And so he's a member of the Transportation and Parking Commission. So he brings a lot to the table in the discussion. I talked with him for quite a while about their commission. He was, it was a very interesting conversation. We talked about the authority of their commission. Talked about kind of, which gets into then the scope issues. And we talked about the composition of the commissions, and we talked about a little bit about sidewalks. And without going into detail now, it was an extremely interesting discussion. Where we kind of ended up was I asked Alex, would he be willing to attend a TSO meeting for us and offer his expertise and answer questions for the entire committee? And his answer was yes, and he would recommend that if he did that, that we also invite the chair of the Transportation Parking Commission in Northampton, who is the director of Public Works, Donna, I think it's Scalia is her name. And if we want to pursue that kind of exploration before we make a decision, we are going to delay our process in the council level in making a recommendation for council action and for council consideration. So I wanted to just give that kind of brief report because I don't know if as a town manager, if you feel that we need to move forward on a quicker schedule, or if this is one that allows us time to do that kind of exploration.
No, I think you should definitely talk with Northampton folks. I think that'd be really informative for the council committee.
Okay. Knowing that Paul has to go, does anybody have any other questions for Paul about either of these topics? Because I've promised him I would respect the time period. Jennifer.
I just wanted to ask, in terms of Southeast Street, are we going to take a vote, or we kind of reached, I mean, an official recommendation for the various options we've discussed? Or is it just a general consensus?
Certainly not today. I think that what I would recommend that we do as the next step is that we formally send the document for the that described the December 19 meeting to TAC, DAAC, and probably send it also to the schools and the elementary school building committee and ask them to offer comments. I would not feel that we're.
Okay, I didn't know where you, okay, that's good, thank you.
Bob?
Yeah, Paul, I wanted to ask you, I think I'm the one who thought about some sort of de minimis impact on town finances that could be given to the Transportation and Parking Commission. In other words, they would have authority to make small changes in parking rates or something like that, but there'd be some level of which above that, I would like to see it go to the council. Can we even define a de minimis amount, or is that just, I mean, pie in the sky, forget about trying to do that?
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to think about that. I mean, I think the goal of this creating such a body is to eliminate bureaucracy and to expedite decision making. If it's just another intermediary that I mean, yeah, I mean, I mean, you could also just sort of revise tax charge as is, if it's going to be advisory, and give them a little bit more authority to do certain things, or give the manager more authority to set some smart parking fees or whatever it is you want it, however you want to do it. So.
Okay, thanks.
And I guess on Southeast Street, I guess what I'm hearing is that you want us to hold off on seeking additional, maybe one more discussion at TSO before we go back to the engineers and say, here's what we'd like you to dig into, so there's more clarity about what we're asking them to do. We're not ready to do that at this point in time. I think that's what I'm hearing.
This would be my opinion that in order to make that kind of decision, I would like to offer the council as a whole the opportunity to discuss it. I think to make that sort of a major decision based upon a committee doesn't strike me to be what our council process calls for.
Okay.
And in order to do that, I think that we need a little bit of process that I described. So with
Okay.
that, Paul, I know you
Great.
have to go.
Thank you.
It's time.
Appreciate that for all. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. And with apologies to the committee, I'm sorry that I had to run it in that fashion, but I knew that Paul was very clear about a conflict that he had. So turning back to the original discussion that we were having regarding the Southeast Street, is there anything what are your thoughts about the committee adopting the summary of the December 19 meeting as a document we could send to the council, to DAAC, and to TAC? I think I would like, I'm only going to do it with the motion that has been approved by the committee, because it is given the nature of the document. Councilor Ryan?
So based on the discussion we just had, I'm not sure this is going to be very helpful to them. It's going to give them the impression that there's all these possibilities out there, when in fact we're actually seriously considering not doing anything. I'm not saying that's the right thing to do. I don't know what I think about it at the moment, but that seems to be, if they get this document, they're going to start thinking about, well, what we'd like to do, and they'd have this idea and that idea and that idea and that idea. And I'm not sure we're even at that point yet. I think we shouldn't send them something until we have a clear sense of what it is that we want to do. And I don't think we have that sense now. This can go to the council, I think, well, I guess. But I'm not sure I want to send it to TAC or DAAC, because it gives, well, yeah.
Jennifer?
Or do we want to add as, another possible suggestion that, what we've just discussed today, another option could be waiting until the school opens and see how the traffic flow is impacted. I mean, I would feel comfortable adding that, amending this memo to include that as a possible option.
Just have a couple of questions for Guilford. One is whether you have any observations about traffic flow at the peak times currently when school is open. And secondly, what is there a possibility of doing something to connect the two traffic lights, the one that's currently just blinking and the one at Main Street, and would there be anything that could be done to be helpful to the situation? You muted.
We haven't paid much attention to what's going on at the school. Things just kind of work over there, and I think the drivers take it to their own to make it work, and no one's really, we could start paying more attention to it. But we haven't really paid much attention to it because we thought it was just gonna be a temporary situation. We've been working on other things. As far as making the driveway traffic light work with the Main Street traffic light, we actually had them working. They worked pretty good, but then drivers ignored the lights. You would have a red light facing you and a green light farther down, and people would think they had a green light and ignore the first red light. So we realized this was causing more of a safety issue than having them on flash. So they were turned back to flash. So I would definitely not recommend going back and trying to make them work again. It's just I don't know. Maybe it's just too constricted in that area. When you're at Big Y, it's the same, basically the same distance at Big Y. Maybe actually it is the same distance. We measured it. Between the light going into extended care and the AEIOU building and the Big Y parking lot, those are the same distance, but there's 2 lanes of traffic there on each side and a turn lane in the middle. So you actually have a larger area and it's more open. And you can tell there's more going on there. So I think maybe the fact it's constricted, the tree canopy keeps it tight. You don't see a lot of other things going on. You cannot see the people on Main Street at the traffic light if you're stopped at the school. If you're at Main Street, you can't see what's going on around the corner to the left. If you're coming from Southeast Street, you can't, if you're coming from Northeast Street heading south, you can't see who's sitting at the traffic light at the school, but you can at Big Y. So maybe that openness of the intersection, even though it's extended, makes it function better and people pay attention to it and actually obey it. Although we'll probably get lots of calls now saying no one, they observe people not obeying the Big Y intersection traffic light, which would be nice, but it does seem to function better. And I think that, so I wouldn't even think about turning those two lights back on to work together until we make some major changes at the intersection. So there's better sight lines and sight distances and people know can see what's going on more. Sorry, that was a long-winded explanation.
No, that's why did you not have choose not to have the two traffic lights be green for Southeast Street at the same time?
So if you have the traffic light, in front of the school be green for Southeast Street, and you have it be green at Main Street, that's great for people on Southeast Street. But people have to turn out of the school. So people turning right out of the school or left out of the school have to have a red light on Southeast Street for traffic going north to stop them so they can make the turn out of the driveway. But then you have to have the green light at Main Street, or you only let out the few cars that can fill up that queue between Main Street and the school driveway. And then that's the only amount of cars you can let out. And then you have to go through it again. So you don't get a good movement out of the school if you don't stop the people at the first light on Southeast Street and keep the light at Main Street green for people who need to go straight, make left or right turns. That makes sense?
It does, I guess, unless you made the light, I'm not even sure this would work. You would know made the Main Street light be able to be green so that people could make a left or right turns. And it's only southbound traffic that was it the southbound traffic that was the biggest problem with people? So it's
Yes.
southbound traffic that you really need to.
Well, no, it's the northbound traffic on Southeast Street.
Right.
The northbound traffic sees a red light, but then they see a green light, so they
Green
kind of ignore the first red light.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
Councilor Ryan.
So again, just if in the hope of clarifying, Guilford and Paul have come to us to get some sense of direction, some sense of what we want them to do or not do. We originally got a plan with 4 roundabouts, and the overwhelming sense seems to be that's not something we want. So they look to us and they say, okay, then what do you want us to do now? And one option is to ask them and to go back and provide us with a second plan that we could look at. And then we need to set some of the basic parameters for that. And the other option is that don't do anything. We're not asking you to do anything. You don't need to give us another plan. You don't need to do anything. We're just, I mean, you're obviously going to have to figure out how this is going to work once the school is built. But for the moment, we're not asking for anything back from you. And I'm asking my colleagues, are we asking Guilford and Paul to come back with something, another option? Because I can think of what I would like them to do. Or are we simply saying for the moment, we don't need anything more from you?
Bob?
I don't think it's a question of whether we could use additional options. I'm concerned that we spend a lot of money, we come back with another option, and it's something we don't want, and we've wasted time and money on an option that isn't going to go anywhere. So until we know what it is, I mean, as I said, my problem is I have certain biases and I can't get past them because I don't have facts. If you could present me with facts, I can change my opinions. I mean, Guilford, the experience you described with people running a red light just because a green light is up in the future. I came here from the Washington, D.C. area. That happened all the time. People did that all the time. It used to drive me crazy, but you'd have to be very careful, even if you have the light at intersections, because people would be coming, down, cruising fast through a red light in order to, because the light in front of them was green. So I know that's a problem, but I don't know. Again, I don't have a good answer right now to say what it is I want, except through a bias. And I don't have enough facts to objectively look at what the options are and what we should do about it. So that's my concern. My concern is we'll go ahead and spend money, and then we'll be back sitting here arguing over, well, do we really want to do this or do we want to do that? So that's it.
Councilor Lord.
Thank you. So absolutely thank you, Guilford, for all the work that you put into this. I'm beginning to understand we can't just get a second version of what this could be like without spending a lot of money. I'm not sure if that's as true if we're looking at just doing the roundabouts on one side that was proposed with the light. And I'm really actually liking the idea of building the school and then figuring out if there is even a problem. Like, do some people avoid that part? Let me go down this road because I know schools. So even though that probably sounds ridiculous and there might be huge red flags because you know what's coming, Guilford, and I don't. But I would be leaning towards either one side of roundabouts and or waiting to the school, and then also finding out what the people are leaning towards. I know the 4 rotaries scared a lot of people because a lot of people don't know how to even navigate them. But yeah, that's just my 2 cents for now. Sorry, my camera's off. I'm just not feeling well, but thank you.
That's all right.
So I guess this question then is for Guilford, kind of building on what Hala just said. Would he be comfortable with the idea of basically not doing anything and letting see how this plays out from his perspective as a professional and knowing that situation as he does? Is that something he thinks that is responsible, or it's not a completely crazy idea to just wait and see how this plays out? And second question is, if we do, would there be some merit in spite of the cost in producing a second plan, which would give us some facts that would involve digging into the common and involve 1 or 2 other sort of broad parameters, reducing the number of roundabouts perhaps to 1. And so, so there's the question of, if we do nothing and just wait and see how this plays out, from his perspective as our DPW chief and given his professional experience, is that something that he'd be comfortable with, or does he think that's really perhaps not very wise? And secondly, would it make sense? Would he be willing to spend some money? How much money are we talking about to produce a second plan that would reduce the number of roundabouts and perhaps be something we could, at least we'd have something we could talk about?
So I don't know the cost for going through another iteration of plans. I imagine it's a few $100,000. I put in $500,000 in the budget request just because that would also be enough money to do the final plans too, once something was decided. So we're looking like maybe 100,000 to 200,000 in that range to kind of play around with some more options, I think. And then another 300,000 probably to flesh out to the final design plans. That's why you'll see the budget request in the capital is for $500,000.
Okay.
I do think it's wise to go ahead and spend some money and run the models again and see, okay, if we do just say all traffic lights, this is how it's going to work. And yes, we'll end up putting a pretty substantial 3rd lane on in Southeast Street, and it may run the whole length of the common to do that. So, but you're not gonna see that unless we spend some money and run the models and see how it would function. Queuing distance, and it may be queuing distance and queuing times, and the intersection would only be a level of service that's really unacceptable for an hour or two each day. And then the rest of the time it works great. So that's not going to be known until we spend some money. And yes, we do need to spend some money and look at the options to the roundabout. And then you also can compare roundabouts to the intersections. Once we do the intersection work, you can say, well, I want to put the intersection here, but I want to keep the roundabout here, or I want to do this type of roundabout here, and you'll be able to see how they all compare to each other, which you can't see right now. You really only have one choice.
Council Lord?
Sorry, I never took my hand down.
Okay, Jennifer?
Would it add a lot of expense, or do you think it's just a crazy idea is if the engineers, do a revised a revised plan that you just discussed, also looking at the two one-way street options?
We can look at it again. We have already kind of looked at that, and the amount of traffic that we have to double back on itself seemed to add a great deal more traffic to the two driveways. But we can look at it.
Okay, no, I didn't actually realize you'd looked at it, so, okay.
You're taking everyone, what you end up doing is, by doing that, you take everyone that's going on Main Street and either going to Pelham or making a left on Northeast Street. You now send them south in front of the old school. You make them loop back around, then go back up to the Main Street intersection where they can turn right or go straight. So you're adding a little more traffic than needs to across that, those driveways.
And
But
did that
somebody's
outweigh?
let's say that again, and describe how somebody would come from the center of Amherst and continue on out towards Pelham.
So if you were coming from the center of Amherst and you wanted to go to Pelham, you would get to the road that goes by the old school, which is, I'll call it Old Southeast Street, just to call it a name. So you'd be sent down Old Southeast Street, you come back out to Southeast Street, make a left, go back up to Main Street, then make your right to go to Pelham. So you'd have a little, and then if you were going on Northeast Street, you'd have to go do that same movement, and then you'd have to go straight through the intersection up Northeast Street. So you just be adding more traffic, which doesn't need to go in front of the school and doesn't need to be mixed into the school traffic to the school traffic.
Why could you not do a roundabout at Main Street that would allow people to just take the roundabout and go through?
You could. This is where we're talking about the peanut idea, where it's an elongated roundabout, which we may be able to take and do that and tie in the school entrance and Main Street as a little bit larger elongated roundabout, and just have one there, and then they would all go through that.
So it would seem that of the options that we talked about, peanut is one that we really should be giving some more consideration to.
And I think we
So
could do,
Ryan?
Go ahead, Guilford.
sorry. I think if you say yes, you want some more options, we could work all this in together and make it kind of come out as a little more choice and a little more refined. But I mean, you've already said yes, we can take parts of the comment. It's not totally, but you need to know what you're taking to be satisfied. So I can't tell you that until I actually do more work.
Would that involve going back into another large contract with CDM Smith or another firm?
Yes, we would need to go. We need a contract engineer to help us with this.
Councilor,
So this is helpful. What I'm hearing from Guilford is that it would be useful to get another option. That just sitting tight and letting things just stay the way they are for the next umpteen years and see how it plays out may in fact be what happens. But at this point, from his professional perspective, having a second option that addresses some of the concerns that have been raised would give us something concrete to actually respond to, and he thinks would be useful from a planning perspective, but it obviously will cost money. And so the question for us as a committee is are we willing to tell him that's what we want him to do? And what I'm hearing essentially is what we're suggesting is you can use the common, give us a plan that shows what you think would be the best plan and take as much of the common as you think is appropriate. And then we have something to react to. Do a roundabout at the, look at a roundabout at the northern end, so-called peanut, whatever it is at the northern end. Probably a signalized intersection at the southern end on College. And again, Jennifer can weigh in here, but what I'm hearing from Guilford is they've looked at the one-way scenario and it doesn't seem feasible. Now, maybe they changed their minds, but so I think it's those elements. And the question for the committee is, are you comfortable saying as a committee to Guilford, go ahead and do that and come back to us with that plan with those basic parameters or not?
Jennifer?
Well, in response to George, I would say I am comfortable with that option. I think for the commons, though, I would maybe caution that rather than as much as looking at the maximum that can be taken, maybe the minimum, because I think you don't want to come back with a plan that we just know there's going to be a lot of resistance to. And so I'm wondering if the peanut option takes less of the common than adding a whole nother lane. I'm also, this is kind of a question, with the concern about for pedestrian safety crossing a roundabout, is it less so with the peanut option because it seems like it would be narrower at the point the pedestrians cross? That's just a kind of curiosity question for Guilford.
No, it's basically the same. I mean, the width across the crossing will be the same. It's just the fact that you're moving farther down and you have one less crossing. If you have two roundabouts, you'll have at least 2 or 3 crossings you have to do depending on where you're coming from. And with the peanut, you may only get down to where you only have 1 or 2 crossings. So you may get rid of the crossing that's needed.
Okay, but the crossing would necessarily be narrower.
It would not necessarily be narrower.
Okay, so I would be comfortable personally with that, asking you to go back with the engineers, maybe doing a smaller, so to speak, or if it's possible, less costly, come back, given the concerns that have been expressed, and certainly meet with, well, I don't know if Andy was suggesting that there'd be another meeting between Guilford with DAC and TAC, or that we'll give our memo to DAC and TAC, and then they will probably have a meeting where they'd invite Guilford. I'm trying to see how this would, sort of play out the scenario, but I would think if we don't want to say we're just going to sit tight till the school opens, that we ask the consultants to come back with a revised plan, taking our suggestions and concerns into consideration. But would DAC and TAC also have an opportunity to weigh in before it goes to before that point? And I don't know that that's up to TSO. Maybe it's just, if I guess it has 2 questions. We send our memo to the council and it goes to TAC and DAC and the Disability Commission. And then Guilford's will go back to the consultants and to those 2 advisory boards.
Almost all the time we take it back. When we do changes, we'll take them back to those 2 committees as well.
So you'll have that feedback before you go to the consultants.
We have their feedback now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with George and Jennifer that we should ask Guilford to do another revised engineering study. And it'll cost a little bit of money, but it's money well spent, you know, and then we can, hopefully we can make a decision based on fact rather than bias. But I do, Jennifer, you did confuse me a little bit. I mean, I think we should go ahead and do the revised plan and then consult TAC and DAC rather than just send them what we have now, because it's really
Nothing.
just opening up a can of worms, really, in my mind.
Okay, that's okay. I was just trying to get back to what Andy had talked about before. I just want to be, so we're all clear on where everything's going from this meeting today. If you
Yeah,
could recap,
no,
Andy.
what I suggested before was a suggestion. It wasn't anything more than that. But the revised, and just to be clear, the revised plan is essentially using the peanut shape.
Why would do the
So
peanut
it's-
and more signals discussions?
Right? You're gonna say that again?
I would look at the peanut and then also look at more at just doing signals down the whole corridor a little more formally than we did before, because if we can, that'll tell you how much of the common we need to take, and then you can compare, well, excuse me, you can compare if we did signals, we're going to take half the common. We don't want to do that. If you do a peanut, we get what we need, plus you take a third or a quarter or 10% more of the common. So those are things you want to know. You keep saying, well, we're okay with a little bit, but not a lot, but you need to know what the little bit and the lot are to make a decision.
Yeah, and without the design, we can't really know how those fit together. You know, I was looking at the the draft memo that's in the packet, and when you start looking at those, the number one was reconfigure the roadway to do the two north, the one way, and that would be southbound, Old Southeast Street. You've considered that and rejected it, and that seems to be out because you've already studied it. Number two is what we're talking about, the peanut shape. The slip lane is totally unrelated. It's something that is a separate topic that was brought up by Kathy Shane as something that would, she thought might assist people coming out of the school and making a right turn. So I think that's something that you consider, but that would involve taking land from the
bank.
No, wasn't that one taking land from the
This is at the north end, yeah.
north end?
north
So
end.
it'd be
Taking from the attorney's
the law
office.
office and the accounting office, that building that's the former tavern. The roundabout at Main Street and Southeast Street, replacing traffic lights is really tied in with the peanut shape thing, so that comes does need to be separately considered. Coordinated lights at Main Street and the school bus entrance is a totally different topic. But that's something that you might be able to comment on. And I think that I've always felt that the roundabout at College Street and Southeast Street is an important topic, but it's really unrelated to the school. But you may disagree on that. And the question of closing the intersection at Belchertown Road at the Cooperative Bank, that's another one that Kathy Shane had been presenting. I guess I'd like to know more about that to really have that discussion, but I consider it almost unrelated too. So looking at it, I would really think that the peanut shape and what might be added by having a traffic light at the bus entrance. Those are the ones that pique my interest. Councilor Ryan?
So, as you heard earlier in the meeting, I am a liaison to TAC, and I will be at their meeting this afternoon and briefly and give them an update. And so I'm going to summarize what we've been saying, and essentially what I'd be telling them, and tell me if I'm not saying what I should be saying, is that we are seeking a second plan with these sort of very broad parameters. And once that plan is presented to us, they will be consulted as per usual, and we will seek their input. But at this point, we're not seeking their input because there isn't any plan, and they've already weighed in on the original plan. So that's what I'm planning to tell them. And I guess my question for Guilford is, does he have a sufficient clarity based on this lengthy discussion this morning as to what we're asking him to do? Does he have any further questions or because we're basically saying to him, it sounds like, please come back to us with a second plan.
I think this memo if you take the options to consider for a new plan, we can actually work through a lot of those and show you more of what you want to see. But we just need funds.
Yeah. I mean, you might get some comments from TAC. They're not hesitant to offer comments, and if they offer comments after you give that report, it'd probably be useful to know what they are.
I'll take good notes.
And I will try and listen in but not participate. I let Tracy know that if I'm in the audience, I don't want to be brought into the meeting. Is there anything else that people want to say right now? Jennifer?
Yeah, so I just want to ask in terms of, you'll be submitting a report to the council meeting for Monday, and that would include the memo in our packet, adding on what we discussed today?
I think that's basically what I'll try and do. And I'll try and we always run into this problem with the Thursday meeting before Monday. So even if I got it out later today, by the time I got comments from you, because I always feel it's important to hear from all of you as a committee before reporting for the committee. But I will try my best.
Yeah, that wasn't meant to put pressure on
I'm
you.
going to modify that to really focus mostly on the kind of report on what happened, because the council hasn't had a formal report about how unhappy people were on December 12th, and that was kind of where our conclusion is. I think that information needs to get across that these are the philosophical points that we have, and we are looking at options. And I may eliminate those options or condense those options into a summary of today's discussion and the question of working on creating other paths for people by bicycle or foot coming in to the school property is really an independent topic, and things that can be worked on that are in any event, they're going to sink or swim on their own. Either you're going to find lighting and improvements for Main Street or you're not, but there's advantages to doing it, but it's a really different topic. And that's probably how I will write it up. Does that sound right?
Yeah, thank you.
Anything else? George, I don't know that we really, if we have a lot of bandwidth to go into a substantial discussion on the commission right now.
You know,
But-
I do.
Hmm.
You know, I do, but that's all right. I understand. I'd like to say one or two things if we could, but it's your call. We have-
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I want clarity from is there general agreement that I should follow up with Alex Jarrett and see if we can set up a meeting for TAC sometime in January, or TAC TSO sometime in January to meet with the two of them. I'd have to also reach out to the chair of the committee, the Public Works Director in Northampton, and see if the two of them can come to one of our meetings and get that as early in the year as possible. That seems to be an agreement.
Yep.
Okay. I'm not going to look for a motion on that. I'm just going to go ahead and act on it. So George, what were you thinking when you made your prior comment?
Well, you know, I'm always loaded for bear for this. So I'm ready to go on and do what I need to do to get this moving forward. It's really up to the rest of the committee if they have any energy to do it. I had a few, I was struck by Paul's comment, a response to Bob's question about de minimis impact. And I sensed a certain, and we haven't had a chance to hear from Paul on this either. Yeah, but I sensed a certain, well, I'm not what the word to use, tension or concern that we are perhaps giving the TPC not all the authority that that Paul would like. So that's something I guess we'll have to wait for Paul to weigh in on. But we're at the point where a number of things are ultimately advisory, not, you know, that's where we seem to be leaning to a body that does a lot, but certain things it's advisory and it comes back to the council. And I think, Andy, you had expressed some concern about how, if we took, for example, the process we're doing right now with Southeast Street, and imagine that TSO had nothing to do with this, and it was strictly in the hands of a appointed commission. You had some questions, you know, and wanted us to kind of think that out a bit, and the implications of that. And I also had some very specific questions just for clarity's sake. In the document that's in the packet, I highlighted some things. We've gone through them, but I want to make sure that I understand and we all are in agreement as to what that is, how it should read. And if we have a few minutes, I wouldn't mind just getting clarification there, but it's now 11:38, so.
Yeah.
Am I the only one who heard that in Paul's response? Bob, I thought there was this.
Yeah, I agree.
We might as well just change tax charge. Oh, no. Anyway.
I agree. He really wants to see a commission that's got
Pretty
teeth.
much, yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, would we want the commission to rule on taking of the South Common? I don't think so.
Yeah. And maybe there he'd see the wisdom of it and he wouldn't have a problem. I think the current document, Bob, if I'm not misreading it, the current scope document puts all parking essentially as advisory. Is that right? I think that's one of the things I want a clarification on. Any permanent change to parking, whether it's rates or, you know, parking permit required, any kind of permanent change to parking would go to TPC, but it would be advisory. It would come to the council. So even de minimis, I think that makes that not a concern, at least for as far as parking goes. Because any kind of permanent change, which would include a rate change or anything like that, would come ultimately to the council for approval.
Jennifer?
Yeah, so Andy, I think I wrote you that I thought you're using Southeast Street as an example of, you know, moving that through a possible commission process was a really excellent one. And I would not personally feel comfortable with that going to a commission, you know, that has no connection to the council. So and I guess this has been sort of evident from when we started began the discussion. I'm not really looking for the commission. I'm uncomfortable with it having the broadest possible purview and powers. You know, I'd want to see it more contained. What I'm comfortable with is the signs, the UMass signs pointing into UMass. I don't think that has to go to a council committee, but I would not have felt comfortable with the Southeast Street traffic changes with council members not having any direct input and being part of that conversation.
Councilor Ryan?
So again, with the chair's indulgence and the committee's approval, let's just spin that out a bit. That scenario of what we're dealing with right now. If we make the change to the TPC as we're imagining it, where their role would be advisory in this case, they would do, in theory, all, if not all, the things we've been doing. But then they would send their recommendation to the council, and the council would have a number of options. One option would be, in this case, to just adopt their recommendation. They could vote it up or down. They could say yay or nay. They also could send it back to the commission with specific instructions as to things they wanted them to do, or they could send it to, say, TSO with specific instructions. For instance, there hasn't been sufficient outreach or whatever. In other words, if they look at the recommendation and they look at the process, the council has the authority to, you know, do whatever it wishes. And so I don't know if that addresses your concern, Andy, or if that even was your concern, that if, you know, so there seem to be a number of things the council can do, even though the TPC would be in charge of this process that we've just been through. They would be running it. But when it comes back to the council, it may not be pleasant, but we might have to do many of the same things over again if we felt it was necessary. But obviously, Paul's trying to create a situation where that just can't happen. Duplication of meetings and staff time, etc. But in cases like this, I don't see how you can avoid it. And put the possibility of it. Is that how people see it playing out? That's how I would see it playing out. If we had the TPC in existence and they were given this Southeast Street process, they would be doing many, if not all, the things we've been doing. And then when they're done, they'd send a recommendation to the council. Are people comfortable with it? I mean, that's, yeah, I mean,
would it then be assigned?
Yeah.
Would it then be assigned by the council to a committee, which is the normal council process, or is this substituting for having a committee referral so that there's no council committee before the council meeting? And what takes place at the council meeting if there's a lot of questions that come up? You're taking up a lot of time at council meetings.
Well, what I'm imagining is that the recommendation would come to the council. Councilors would read it. And just as in all the other cases of TPC action, there would be a possibility for a vote. But what could also happen is if enough councilors thought this is not adequate, they haven't done a good enough job, or they have other questions they feel they have to be looked at, they could make a motion to refer. And most likely they would refer it to TSO. Or if they really didn't like it, if the council really thought it was terrible, they could just vote it down and say, thank you very much for your recommendation, but we reject it. And that's that. But most likely, I think they would probably say, look, there's some problems here, and we need to do a referral. But I guess your question, Andy, is would any council committee see it before it got to the council? And the answer, I think, would be no. It would be up to the councilors to do their due diligence. And they also perhaps would be hearing from constituents. So that might encourage some of them to pay more attention, but assuming they're paying attention, they do the due diligence and they read the report, they read the recommendation. Yes, it would take up council time, but
there seemed to be, and then Jennifer, I'll get to you in just a second, but there seemed to be some things that we would probably agree that a commission should just decide. Telephone, electric poles, for example. Just throwing one out, but I'm sure there are others that we would identify also.
bus shelters, benches,
Street direction signs, you know,
right,
direction signs.
it's in the document, it lists the, right,
yeah.
and those are all by decision by TPC.
So I have a question. So something like the solar bylaw, that was developed not by a commission, but by the solar bylaw working group. So I think that had to go. Could the council have adopted that before referring it to CRC? And that's a question. I don't know if anybody knows the answer. So it came to the council and the council immediately referred it to CRC. Did it have to do that because that was considered a working group? Or could the council have just decided they liked it as it was and approved it without having referred it? You know, because now it's working its way for a year and going at CRC.
I think it'd be a parliamentary decision. I mean, the chair probably automatically puts it into a referral, but someone could make a motion to change that. I think the usual procedure is to send it to a committee and have them chew on it for a while before the whole council takes it on. But if someone felt strongly, if they felt, they could just make a motion to or defeat the referral and move to voting on it straight up. I think it's parliamentary.
So with this Transportation Commission, Paul brought it to the council sort of towards the end of the last council session, really asking us to approve it.
Well,
and
he gave the reasons why, and in our initial.
And then we referred it to the committee, but he would have
Exactly.
been okay if we just approved it.
Well, it's our call. I mean, he would defer to our judgment, and our judgment is that we need some time to think about it, which we've been doing.
Yeah.
I think he clearly would like a commission like this to reduce, I mean, the reasons are in we've already talked about it, to reduce staff time, to make it easier for constituents and, residents to know where to go. And maybe it sounds like maybe in the best of all possible worlds, he'd like all of it to be in their authority, but clearly we're not headed in that direction completely.
I had the impression, and I think I need to hear more from Alex, that Northampton does not give a lot of final authority to their commission.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to hear their experience. I agree.
And that they more frequently are making recommendations, which make it sort of a combination of attack and the council committee working together to make recommendations to the council. Certainly on their Main Street proposal, because we did talk about that, and everybody reads about that all the time in the Gazette, is an extremely controversial proposal. And that is a council, reserved to the council. And I asked whether the commission was involved, and he said yes, the commission did participate in the process of making a recommendation. So I think that I think we could define the areas. We will define some areas so that we would give the commission authority to decide on. And by the way, there was one interesting additional thing that he said, and that is that sidewalks, they actually have a sidewalks policy built into the complete streets. They have a complete streets ordinance, which their ordinances are equivalent to our bylaws. And what it essentially says is that if there is a substantial reconstruction of or paving on a street, that if possible, that these are the expectations for sidewalks. So they do have something that we don't have in a concrete ordinance provision on that subject. That's Brian.
So, the document that we have right now in the packet spells out as clearly as I can at this point in time what goes to TPC for final decision and what does not. And what I need from you, not necessarily today, but soon, is an agreement that the language in that scope document is in fact the language that you all agree to. So I'll give you some examples just to think about. The current document, as it's written, as I understand it, what we're just talking about with South East Street, according to this proposed policy, that would go to TPC to hold hearings, public listening sessions, and then make a recommendation to the council as to what to do. And then the council would have the final say. That's the way it currently reads. Would you prefer it read that TPC had nothing to do with it and that something like this, of this major scope, just goes directly to the council and hence the council sends it to like TSO? But currently the way it reads is it goes to TPC, they do everything, then they send their recommendation to us, and then we make a decision. And as I said, we could decide to send it to TSO and we could do a lot of this over again. The roundabout at Amity Street, that would go to TPC, but then it comes to the council for approval. And again, we could say yes or no, or we could, right? If you wanted to, I mean, in my district, I'd like to add a crosswalk at U Drive and Northampton Road. That would go to TPC and they would have the final authority on that. If you want to change speed limits on Northampton Road, which I would like to do in my district, that goes to TPC, but according to the current document, the town council has final say on speed limits. So they would do all the steps and they would make a recommendation, but because it's a speed limit issue, that would eventually be a council decision. If you want to change, if you wanted to, on Lincoln, if you wanted to go to permit parking only. So let's say, I mean, just as hypothetical, you know, want to go to permit parking only as opposed to the current no parking at all. That goes to TPC. But again, the council has final say. You want to have rapid flashing beacon at Memorial Drive, which I'd like to have in my district. That goes to TPC and they have final say. So these are examples. And I have no idea how Paul feels about this, but that's the direction we've been moving in. That's the way it currently reads. And those are some examples of how it would play out. And you can see the council still has a fair amount of authority. Now, I think Paul's hope and my hope is that in most cases, the council would accept a recommendation. That would be the end of it. But the only alternative I see is basically not even giving TPC a role in some of these things and just saying it goes to the council. And I'm not hearing people saying that they'd like to do that. That the way it currently reads and the examples I've given you, you're comfortable with, is my assumption. So you need to think about it, and the documents in the packet, maybe you can think of some other examples, but that's the direction we've been going in. That's where we're at. And the next time we talk about it, I will clean it up a little bit, but that's pretty much the way it reads. And I'd be looking for either your, at that point, I guess I'd be looking for your approval or requests for changes.
And the other part of it is the composition of the commission.
And I think Andy's thought of having Jarrett come and talk to us would, I think that it was certainly could impact this as well, but certainly would impact the idea of composition because they have 11 members on their body. And we're talking at the moment, I mean, what I suggested is 5. And that's, I don't know that that's right. But anyway, so yes, the other is composition. And in their body, they, as you saw in the packet, they have 2 counselors on their body. So 2 of the 11 are elected officials. And I certainly would like to, I mean, I have a lot of questions about that because I personally, as I've probably made clear, I don't think that's a good idea here, but that's, you know, we'll see. But yes, composition would be the next, if we're agreed on the scope. And then I think we're pretty much done, except getting Paul's input and Guilford's input. I have a question about what we call traffic. I think it's called traffic controls in the document. Yeah, traffic controls, which basically seems to be speed limits, truck limits, and other traffic controls. I'm not sure what that means. I know what speed limits means. I don't know what truck limit means, but I think that means trucks can't be on certain roads or something. I don't know. But I just have a question there for clarity's sake, and I don't think we can answer it. But what it does seem to include is speed limits of any kind. Any permanent changes to speed limits would eventually come to the council for a final decision, but it would first go to TPC. And that's it.
Well, one of the reasons that we talked about in our last substantial discussion of this, I think was Bob, you were raising a concern that counselors who were ward or for us district counselors would might give favor in decisions or pay more attention to their own areas of town and not to others. I sort of was pushing Alex a little bit on that, and he does not see that happening in Northampton. And I don't, you know,
They're much more civilized over there. What can I say?
No, I look at our council and I give a lot of credit because I find that councilors think about their districts, but they recognize that they're making decisions for the whole town. I don't think that you guys make decisions as district councilors that don't consider other parts of the town as you make the decisions. So as a counselor at large, I guess I don't buy into that concern. Jennifer?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think we were all very concerned about, the preschool. Why am I blanking on the street? I was gonna say
Henry
Market Street. Yeah.
Henry Street, yeah.
Henry Street. Now, granted, children go to preschool from everybody's district, but I think that, I know I was very concerned. I wouldn't have been any more concerned if that was my district. I think we were all shared the urgency there. And I thought, I was really happy the council responded. That had been going on for years, but when it came to the council this session, we tried to act on it as expeditiously as we could.
I probably will, speaking as an individual member, not as chair, take the view that council should be represented on the commission.
Well, this is a preview of coming attractions. I think the question is when is this show gonna hit the waves? When are we gonna go live? And I guess the answer is it depends on when the committee meets again next and what the composition of the committee is, because this is going to be something for the next iteration of TSO. And you put in your agenda, Andy, sort of some quick thoughts about what we're passing on to the next body, whoever's on it. And I don't know if you want to talk about that at all briefly, but otherwise, I think we're kind of done.
I think that we pretty well are done. Because our discussion of the Southeast Street, we've given direction of where we think this needs to go for any committee. And so it's sort of there. And I think we also think that this commission discussion needs to be concluded with it, and that there ought to be a meeting with Northampton as soon as possible, and then assess where we're at and move forward, taking the work that's already been done with George's direction and coordination and get it done.
Andy, would it be inappropriate for you to reach out to Jarrett at this point and just sound out his, I mean, of course, part of the problem is you're not sure what our schedule is going to be. That could change. So maybe at this point, we just have to wait. I think it's a great suggestion. If I'm on this body, I would look forward to that discussion. But maybe at this point, there's nothing we can really do until we know when we're meeting and who's on it. So I guess that's, yeah. Okay.
I think that probably I will let Alex know that we had the discussion. We really appreciated his feedback and his offer that we suggest sometime early next year, not touch on dates, and reach out as he suggested to Donna Lascali and ask her to also participate as their Department of Public Works Director and chair of their commission. So I will take a few follow-up steps along those lines, but not try and schedule anything because we can't. So with that said, is there anything else that we need to discuss today?
I think waste hauler is just, it's, we're waiting to hear from Paul, right? I mean, that obviously is going to be an issue for the next iteration of this committee, but we have nothing to say about it at the moment because we're waiting for something to come back from Paul.
On
Waste hauler.
waste hauler, yes. Well, he has to set up a process to find the consultant, and I think that's the question that we need to ask him is what's he doing to get that consultant in place?
But wouldn't you say it's fair that this committee, one of the major topics that we'll be dealing with in the coming months is going to be waste hauler, we assume? Is that a
Yes.
fair assumption? Yeah.
Yes. By the way, I had a little bit of a discussion with Alex Jarrett about that too, because in his professional life, are you familiar with the Pedal People in Northampton?
Mm-hmm.
He's the direct. He is the person who created Pedal People and runs that organization. So his employment is in Pedal People, and so he's well aware of the whole, a lot of the issues that we've been talking about in waste hauler. I did talk with him about that a little bit too.
Is he going to be at MMA?
He's a wealth of information.
He is going to be at MMA, yes.
All right. I'm going to track him down. He's good. I think Andy, you will be there, and I think Bob will be there, but I think Jennifer can't, but three of us will be there. And so that'll be nice.
I'll be there as well.
Great. Paula, good. That's great. So four of us will be there.
Well, I was, I might reach out to him. Time is going to be tight at this conference.
Yeah, no, that's true. You have all these plans,
That's
meeting
the
people. but,
problem.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I think that if you're meeting somebody from Northampton, it's probably
Easier to
easier
do.
to set it up locally than to do something
Right.
to try and do too much at the conference. Okay, any other business that wasn't anticipated 48 hours in advance?
I have a meeting, TSO meeting next week. Is that correct?
No,
No, okay.
no, that was we had
Take
realized
it off my calendar. Okay.
that needed to be postponed until after
The new
we had
president
appointment process.
Mhm.
or
And I
a new
told
president, I
Mac
should
that
say,
way.
election of the next president.
Right.
Yeah, the election of the next president, I believe, is on Monday,
Yes.
and then how quickly the process will be completed. Lynn used to do it pretty quickly afterwards, and I think it needs to and will, whether she's president or not. So I don't think there's any other business. I think we could take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
A second.
So George has made the motion to adjourn and Jennifer seconded, and take a quick
Bob should get credit for that, but that's all right.
Okay. Doesn't matter.
Counselor Ryan,
Aye.
Bob Hegner,
Aye.
Jennifer Taub,
Yes.
Counselor Lord,
Aye.
and I'm an aye. So we are adjourned, and thank you.
Thank you, Andy,
you.
for all you've done.
Thank you.
Yeah.
See you Monday.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Monday.
See you Monday. Andy, are you there?
Yeah, I've been. The meeting is
Can you stay for a second? I'm still recording. Maybe we should, I'll just call you. I'll
yes.
call you. I'll call you.
Okay.
Thank you.